The neon lights of Neo-Viridian flickered overhead, casting an eerie blue glow on Zilia's indigo skin. She clutched her infant son Kalen closer to her chest, sheltering him from the light drizzle that had begun to fall. The baby stirred, his silvery eyes, identical to his mother's, fluttering open momentarily before closing again. It had been 3 months since what the mining company had dismissively called an accident at the asteroid belt facility. 3 months since she'd become a widow, 3 months of desperate survival. Neo-Viridian was supposed to be a haven for interstellar immigrants like herself, but the reality was far from the promotional holograms. Without proper documentation or worker rights, Zilia found herself relegated to the technological slums that formed a grimy ring around the gleaming corporate metropolis. Here, the dregs of society, both human and non-human, fought for scraps and struggled to stay one step ahead of deportation. Zilia adjusted the worn shawl covering Kalen, the last gift her husband had given her before departing for what would be his final shift. The baby made a soft sound, almost like a hum, and Zilia felt the familiar pang of fear. Krillian infants were known to be sensitive to energy fields, and Kalen seemed exceptionally so. Each time he reacted to nearby tech, she feared someone might notice how unusual it was, even by Krillian standards. She had visited 17 establishments today, seeking employment. 17 rejections. Some laughed outright at the alien woman with a baby. Others simply pointed to the humans' only signs that weren't technically legal, but were rarely enforced in this part of the city. Her meager savings were nearly depleted. The sign ahead caught her attention. Marcus's electronics repair. It looked even less promising than the previous establishments, with peeling paint and a flickering holographic sign that kept shorting out every few seconds. But beggars couldn't be choosers, and the small help-needed notification on the door, so outdated it was actually printed on paper, gave her a small flicker of hope. She pushed open the door. The interior was cluttered with the skeletons of various machines, components scattered across every available surface. The air smelled of soldering metal and ozone. For a moment, Zilia thought the shop was empty, until she spotted a pair of human legs protruding from beneath a large diagnostic console. "Excuse me," she said, her voice betraying the slightest alien accent. "I saw your sign. Do you still need help?" There was a loud clang, followed by a colorful string of curses. The man slid out from under the console, rubbing his forehead where he'd apparently struck it in surprise. He was middle-aged by human standards, with unkempt, graying hair and several days' worth of stubble. His eyes, when they focused on her, were sharp and suspicious. "We're closed," he said flatly, though the sign clearly indicated otherwise. "Your door was open," Zilia replied, "and your sign says you're looking for help." The man, presumably Marcus, rose to his feet, wiping his hands on a rag that only seemed to redistribute the grime. He eyed Zilia, and more pointedly, Kalen. "I need someone who can work, not someone looking for charity," he said. "Besides, I don't hire outsiders. Too much paperwork." Zilia felt her hopes sink, but desperation made her push harder. "I can work. I'm stronger than I look, and I learn quickly. Can you work with a baby strapped to you?" Marcus asked skeptically. "He's quiet. He doesn't interfere." As if to contradict her, Kalen chose that moment to let out a small cry. Zilia rocked him gently, and he quieted almost immediately. Marcus shook his head. "Look, I don't have anything for you. I barely make enough to keep myself afloat. I definitely don't need the attention of hiring an undocumented alien. Immigration enforcement comes through here often enough as it is." Zilia felt her face grow hot with a mixture of shame and anger. "How do you know I'm undocumented?" Marcus let out a humorless laugh. "Because if you had papers, you wouldn't be in this part of town looking for work in a dump like mine." Before Zilia could respond, the door behind her flew open. A well-dressed human woman stormed in, carrying what appeared to be an expensive neural interfacing device. "Marcus, this thing is broken again. I paid you to fix it last week, and now it's giving me error messages that don't even make sense." Marcus's demeanor changed instantly, from openly hostile to professionally annoyed. "Let me see it, Mrs. Abernathy." The woman thrust the device at him, then seemed to notice Zelia for the first time. She took a step back, her eyes narrowing. I didn't know you hired alien help. I don't, Marcus said curtly, examining the device. She was just leaving. Mrs. Abernathy sniffed disapprovingly. Well, good. You know how these Krillians are, always tinkering with things they shouldn't. Zelia stiffened at the casual prejudice, but said nothing. She had heard worse in her time on Earth. Besides, she couldn't afford to alienate a potential employer, even one as unwelcoming as Marcus. Marcus was frowning at the device. I don't see any error messages. Because it's not showing them now, Mrs. Abernathy said impatiently. But it keeps flashing a critical energy mismatch, warning, and then shutting down. It happened 3 times today. Marcus connected the device to a diagnostic panel. I'll need to run some tests. It'll take time. I need it back by tomorrow, the woman insisted. I've got a virtual gala, and I need to be properly interfaced. I can't show up like some tech-less savage. As Marcus worked, Zelia couldn't help but watch. She recognized the device model. It was similar to communication equipment used in the asteroid mines. Her husband had often brought broken units home for repair. When Marcus opened the casing, she immediately spotted the issue. It's the phase inverter, she said before she could stop herself. Both humans turned to stare at her. Excuse me, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. Zelia swallowed hard but continued. The phase inverter. It's misaligned. That model uses a quantum phase T10, and they're notorious for slipping out of calibration, especially when exposed to fluctuating energy fields. Marcus looked from Zelia to the device, his brow furrowed. Mrs. Abernathy looked between them, then demanded, Can you fix it or not, Marcus? I'll fix it, he muttered, turning back to the device. Zelia noticed his hands hesitate over the components. He wasn't sure. Taking another risk, she stepped forward. May I? She asked, nodding toward the device. No, you may not, Marcus snapped. Mrs. Abernathy looked increasingly impatient. If she knows how to fix it, let her try. I don't care who fixes it as long as it works. After a moment of visible internal struggle, Marcus stepped aside. Fine. Show me. With careful movements, Zelia handed Kalen to Marcus, who took the infant with obvious discomfort, holding him at arm's length as if he might explode. Kalen stared at the human with curious silver eyes. Zelia approached the diagnostic bench and deftly manipulated the device's internal components. Her slim fingers moved with precision, adjusting the tiny phase inverter. When she finished, she closed the casing and activated the device. It hummed to life, the interface glowing steadily without a single error message. Fixed, she said simply, turning back to reclaim her son from Marcus's awkward hold. Mrs. Abernathy looked impressed despite herself. Well, that was quick. I suppose these Krillians do know their technology after all. She paid Marcus, who was still staring at Zelia with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. After Mrs. Abernathy left, silence fell over the shop. Zelia waited, hoping against hope that her demonstration might have changed Marcus's mind. Where did you learn to do that? He finally asked. My husband worked in the asteroid mines. He repaired equipment in his spare time. I helped. Marcus seemed to be wrestling with a decision. Finally, he sighed heavily. I can't pay much, and it's just cleaning, organizing, maybe some basic repairs. Nothing complicated. Zelia felt a surge of relief, so powerful it made her knees weak. I'll take it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Marcus warned. I can only pay in cash, no benefits, no record of employment. And if anyone official asks, you don't work here. You're just a friend helping out. Zelia nodded. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. A foothold. You can start tomorrow, 8 o'clock sharp, and find somewhere for the baby. I can't have an infant in the shop. He stays with me, Zelia said firmly. This was non-negotiable. He's quiet, and I can work with him. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but eventually shrugged. Your problem, not mine. But if he causes trouble, you're both out. As Zelia left the shop that evening with the promise of work the next day, she felt the first glimmer of hope since her husband's death. It wasn't much, but it was a start. What she didn't see was Marcus watching her leave, his eyes thoughtful. After she disappeared from view, he turned to a console and began searching for information on recent asteroid mining accidents and the company that ran them. The next morning, Zilia arrived at the shop precisely at 8. Kaylin was securely wrapped against her chest in a carrier she had fashioned from leftover fabric. The baby was awake but content, his silver eyes taking in the strange new environment with apparent fascination. Marcus was already working, his attention focused on a complex-looking device spread out on his workbench. He barely looked up when she entered. "Cleaning supplies are in the back," he said by way of greeting. "Start with the front area. Customers sometimes actually come in, and it looks like a disaster." Zone. Zilia set to work without complaint. The shop was indeed chaotic, with years of accumulated dust and grime coating every surface that wasn't regularly touched. She worked methodically, moving from shelf to shelf, organizing as she cleaned. Occasionally, Kaylin would make soft sounds, particularly when she neared certain devices, but he remained remarkably well-behaved. Marcus worked in silence, only occasionally glancing up to check on her progress. By midday, the front section of the shop looked noticeably better. Electronic components that had been scattered haphazardly were now arranged by type and size. The display cases actually displayed items rather than being catch-alls for whatever Marcus had tossed in them. "You're not afraid to get your hands dirty," Marcus commented when she approached to ask what area she should tackle next. It wasn't quite approval in his voice, but it was something close to acknowledgement. "I've known dirt before," Zilia replied simply. As the days passed into weeks, a routine developed. Zilia would arrive each morning, clean and organize for a few hours, then spend the afternoon assisting with basic repairs. Marcus remained gruff and standoffish, but he no longer seemed to resent her presence as much. Occasionally, he would even explain a repair he was working on, begrudgingly answering her questions. Zilia was careful. She never volunteered information about herself beyond what was necessary, and she kept her more advanced knowledge of technology hidden, only offering assistance when asked. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with everything at stake. It was during the third week when Zilia noticed Marcus studying her when he thought she wasn't looking. His eyes would narrow slightly, his head tilt in consideration. He had begun asking casual questions about her past, disguised as idle conversation. "How long were you in the mining colonies?" he asked one afternoon as they worked side by side on a batch of malfunctioning kitchen appliances. 5 years, she answered, keeping her tone neutral. "And before that?" Zilia's hands stilled momentarily. "Krylia, the southern continent. Long way from home." She didn't respond to this, instead focusing intently on the circuitry before her. "Your husband," Marcus continued, seemingly intent on conversation for once. "Was he Krylian too?" "Yes." Her voice was clipped now, making it clear she didn't wish to discuss this further. Marcus seemed to take the hint, falling silent again. But Zilia felt the weight of his curiosity, the unasked questions hanging in the air between them. It was later that same day when the first concerning incident occurred. Zilia had stepped into the back storeroom to search for a specific component when she heard the shop's communication terminal activate. Normally, she would have thought nothing of it, but something in Marcus's tone, suddenly formal and cautious, caught her attention. "I'm not sure I can help you with that," she heard him say. "I repair electronics, not track people." There was a pause as the other party responded. "I mind my own business," Marcus continued. "That's how I stay in business." Another pause. "No, I haven't seen anyone matching that description. Lots of people come through here, but I don't pay much attention unless they're paying customers." Zilia felt her heartbeat quicken. She held Kaylin tighter, and the baby, sensing her distress, remained perfectly still and silent. "Like I said," Marcus's voice hardened, "I can't help you, and I don't appreciate the implication." The communication terminated with a sharp beep. Zilia waited a moment before emerging from the storeroom, forcing her expression to remain neutral. Marcus was standing at the counter, his face unreadable. "Found it," she said, holding up the component she'd been sent to retrieve. Marcus nodded, but his eyes were distant, preoccupied. For the rest of the day, he was unusually quiet, even by his standards. That evening, as Zilia prepared to leave, Marcus called her over. "I had an interesting call today," he said, watching her closely. "Someone from Universal Mining Consortium was asking about a Krillian woman with a baby. Seems they're trying to track down a former employee's widow." Zilia felt ice form in her veins, but she kept her expression neutral. "There are many Krillians in Neo-Viridian," she said cautiously. "Not many with babies," Marcus countered, "and fewer still who know their way around phase inverters." They stared at each other for a long moment, a silent battle of wills. "What did you tell them?" Zilia finally asked. "Nothing, but they'll be back. Or they'll send someone. People like that don't give up easily." He paused, then added, "They seem very determined to find you. Care to tell me why?" Zilia considered her options. Flee now? She had saved some money, but not enough. And where would she go? Marcus was watching her, waiting for an answer. Something told her. This was a crucial moment. Her response would determine what happened next. "My husband didn't die in an accident," she said finally, the words painful to speak aloud. "He discovered something the company was doing that was illegal, dangerous. I don't know all the details. He was trying to protect us. And now they're after you because—" Zilia hesitated. "Because they think I know what he knew, or that I have evidence." "Do you?" "No," she answered too quickly. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. Instead, he sighed heavily and ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Look, I don't want trouble. I've had enough of that in my life. But I'm not in the habit of throwing people to the wolves, either." He paused, seeming to wrestle with himself. "Be careful coming and going. Use the back entrance from now on. And if anyone else comes asking questions, make yourself scarce." It wasn't much, but it was more consideration than Zilia had expected. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus waved away her gratitude. "Don't thank me. I'm just covering my own interests. Can't have them thinking I'm harboring fugitives or whatever they think you are." But as Zilia left through the back alley, Kaelin clutched close to her chest. She couldn't help but wonder if perhaps there was more to the grumpy repairman than he wanted to admit. The next few days passed in tense vigilance. Zilia took Marcus's advice, using only the back entrance and keeping herself hidden whenever customers entered the shop. She noticed that Marcus had begun to close and lock the door during repairs, something he hadn't done before. It was during this period of heightened caution that Zilia made a careless mistake. While cleaning near the back of the shop, she accidentally dislodged a small metal object from the pocket of her worn coveralls. A Krillian memory crystal engraved with ancient symbols, a family heirloom that had been passed down for generations. It fell to the floor with a soft ping, rolling under a workbench. Distracted by Kaelin, who had begun to fuss, she didn't notice its absence immediately. It wasn't until the end of the day that she realized with horror that the crystal was missing. She searched frantically, but couldn't find it in the cluttered shop. What she didn't know was that Marcus had found it. The unusual metal had caught his eye as he reached for a dropped tool. He had picked it up, instantly recognizing it was not of Earth origin. The symbols were unfamiliar to him, but he had seen enough technology in his time to know this was something significant, possibly data storage of some kind. Instead of returning it, Marcus had pocketed the crystal, his curiosity overriding his usual policy of non-involvement. That night, after Zilia had left, he connected the crystal to various adapters, trying to access its contents. It was encrypted, of course, but Marcus hadn't always been a small-time repair shop owner. In another life, he had been a systems engineer for one of the largest tech corporations on Earth, with access to tools and knowledge few civilians possessed. By morning, he had managed to break through the first layer of encryption. The contents were still largely inaccessible, but he found references to the Universal Mining Consortium, experimental energy sources, and a project codenamed Starfall. None of it made immediate sense, but it was enough to pique his interest and his concern. When Zilia arrived the next day, Marcus noticed how she surreptitiously continued to search the floor and work areas, her distraction evident despite her attempts to hide it. He said nothing, continuing his own investigation in secret. That afternoon, as Marcus was working in the back room, the shop's alert system pinged, indicating someone at the door. Through the security camera, He saw a sleek corporate hover car pull up outside, its windows tinted to opacity. Two figures emerged, dressed in the unmistakable dark suits of corporate security. Marcus quickly alerted Zelia, who grabbed Kalen and disappeared into a small storage closet, their prearranged hiding spot. He then composed himself and went to answer the door, adopting the slightly confused, slightly irritated demeanor of a man whose work had been interrupted. "Can I help you?" he asked as he opened the door, blocking the entrance with his body. The two men were identical in their corporate blandness, clean-cut, expressionless, with a faint bulge of concealed weapons under their jackets. "Marcus Brennan?" the slightly taller one asked, though it was clear they already knew the answer. "That's me. I'm Agent Davis. This is Agent Mercer. We are with Universal Mining Consortium's Asset Protection Division." The man held up a corporate ID that flashed with embedded authentication markers. "I don't recall having any assets that need protecting," Marcus replied dryly. "We're conducting an investigation into missing company property," Davis continued, unfazed by Marcus's attitude. "We have reason to believe you may have come into contact with a former employee or their family members. I repair electronics, not people. You got the wrong shop." Agent Mercer stepped forward. "Our sources indicate a Krillian female with an infant has been seen entering and exiting your establishment regularly over the past few weeks." Marcus shrugged. "I get all kinds of customers. I don't ask for species identification at the door." "This wouldn't be a customer," Davis said coldly. "Our intelligence suggests you've employed her off the books. Your intelligence is wrong. Now, unless you're here to get something fixed, I got work to do." Marcus tried to close the door, but Mercer placed a hand on it, preventing it from shutting. "We can do this the easy way, or we can do this with a corporate warrant and a full sweep of your premises. Your choice, Mr. Brennan." Marcus felt a cold anger rising in him, a familiar feeling from his past life. He knew their type all too well, corporate enforcers who operated in the gray areas between legality and corporate interests. "You know," he said conversationally, "I used to work for Unicom Systems, head of security architecture for their quantum networks division. I designed systems to keep people like you out of places you didn't belong." The agents exchanged a glance, the first sign that Marcus had managed to surprise them. "If that's true," Davis said, "then you should understand the importance of corporate asset protection." "Oh, I understand exactly how corporations protect their assets," Marcus replied, his voice hardening. "I understand how they classify people as assets when it suits them and liabilities when it doesn't. We're not here to discuss corporate ethics, Mr. Brennan. No, you're here to harass me based on faulty intelligence. I don't employ anyone, let alone an alien with a baby. Now, unless you have that warrant you mentioned, I suggest you leave before I file a harassment complaint with the Civil Liberties Union. I hear they're especially interested in cases of corporate overreach these days." It was a bluff, but delivered with enough confidence to make the agents hesitate. After a moment, Davis handed Marcus a business card. "If you do happen to encounter this individual, we would appreciate a call. There's a finder's fee for information leading to the recovery of our property." "I'll keep that in mind," Marcus said, taking the card and closing the door firmly. He waited until he heard their hover car depart before signaling to Zelia that it was safe to come out. She emerged from the closet, her face pale, Kalen clutched tightly against her chest. "They're gone," Marcus assured her. "For now. They call me property," Zelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that what I am on your world? Property?" Marcus sighed heavily. "No, that's corporate speak. They're careful with their words, never saying outright what they're really after." "It's not me they want," Zelia said after a moment. "It's Kalen." Marcus frowned. "Why would they want a baby?" Zelia seemed to struggle with herself, then made a decision. "There's something I need to show you. Something I lost recently. A data crystal. If you find it." "This?" Marcus produced the Krillian crystal from his pocket. Zelia's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in suspicion. "You had it all along? Were you going to give it back?" "Eventually, after I figured out what it was and why those corporate types are so interested in you too." "You accessed it?" Zelia's voice was incredulous. "Tried to. Got through the first layer of encryption, but not much further. Enough to know it's something important, though. Zelia stared at him, reassessing everything she thought she knew about the grumpy repair shop owner. You're not just a repair technician, are you? Marcus's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. And you're not just a cleaning lady who knows her way around a phase inverter. I think it's time we were honest with each other, don't you? Zelia took a deep breath, then nodded. My husband, Jarrell, was a mining engineer. He specialized in new energy source development. The company brought him on for a secret project. They said it was a revolutionary new power source that would change everything. She paused, gathering her thoughts. At first, he was excited. The work was challenging, the potential enormous. But then he started noticing irregularities, tests that gave impossible readings, equipment failures that couldn't be explained, workers in certain sections of the mine falling ill with symptoms that matched radiation poisoning, but no radiation was detected. He started investigating on his own, documenting everything. What he found, Zelia shuddered. They weren't just mining energy sources. They were tapping into something they didn't understand, something dangerous. A type of energy unknown on Earth. Or Krylia. It had properties unlike anything in known science. Alien technology? Marcus asked. Something beyond even Kryllian understanding. Perhaps. Or perhaps something that should have remained buried. Jarrell called it dark energy, but not in the way your scientists use the term. This was something that seemed to consume other energy forms, growing stronger with each absorption. Marcus frowned, and the company knew this was dangerous. They knew it was unstable, but the potential profit was too great to abandon the project. When Jarrell confronted his supervisors with his findings, they laughed it off, said he was overreacting. But then workers started disappearing. Official records showed transfers to other mining operations, but no one ever heard from them again. Let me guess, Marcus said grimly. Jarrell kept pushing. Zelia nodded. He couldn't let it go. He believed they were covering up deaths, possibly many deaths. He gathered all the evidence he could, encrypted it on that crystal, and was planning to take it to the Interplanetary Regulatory Commission. But he never made it, Marcus concluded. The day before he was scheduled to leave, there was an accident in his section of the mine. A catastrophic equipment failure, they said. No survivors. Zelia's voice broke slightly. They sent me his personal effects and a corporate condolence package. Standard death benefits for an accidental workplace fatality. And then they came after you, Marcus said. Why? Zelia hesitated, then looked down at Kaylin, who was watching Marcus with those uncanny silver eyes. Because of him. Because they realized what he is. And what is he exactly? The day of the accident, Jarrell was experimenting with a sample of the energy source in our quarters. It was against all protocols, but he needed to document its properties outside the controlled environment of the lab. Kaylin was there, just a newborn. There was an unexpected reaction. The energy, it didn't behave the way Jarrell predicted. Zelia stroked her son's head gently. There was a flash, a moment where everything seemed to stop. When it was over, the sample was gone, and Kaylin, she looked up at Marcus. He changed, not physically, but internally. Jarrell's instruments showed energy readings coming from him, readings that matched the mysterious source they were mining. Are you saying the baby absorbed this dark energy? Or bonded with it somehow? We don't understand it fully. Jarrell was still running tests when She swallowed hard. The important thing is that the company somehow found out. Maybe through monitoring equipment, maybe through a medical scan when I took Kaylin to the company doctor for his checkup. However they discovered it, they immediately classified him as company property, a living sample of the energy source they were so desperate to control. That's why you ran, Marcus said, understanding dawning. I had no choice. They were going to take him, experiment on him. My own child. Her voice hardened with a mother's fierce protectiveness. I will die before I let that happen. Marcus was silent for a long moment, processing everything he'd heard. It sounded like the plot of a sensationalist vid-drama, secret experiments, mysterious energy, corporate cover-ups. And yet, looking at Zelia's face, at the quiet intensity in her silver eyes, he found he believed her. The crystal, he finally said. Is it evidence of all this? Yes. Jarrell documented everything: the experiments, the cover-ups, the energy readings. Everything needed to expose what the company is doing and shut down the operation. No wonder they're so keen to find you. Marcus pocketed the crystal again, ignoring Zilia's alarmed look. Don't worry, I'm not turning it in. But we need to be smart about this. Going to the authorities isn't an option. Universal Mining has people in every level of government. Then what do we do? Zilia asked, a note of desperation in her voice. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, thinking rapidly. We need leverage, and we need to get you to somewhere safe, somewhere outside Universal's reach. Where? They have operations throughout the Earth-Mars alliance. Not everywhere, Marcus said, a plan beginning to form in his mind. There are independent colonies, free zones where corporate jurisdiction doesn't apply. The Neptune Collective, for instance, or the Europa Free State. Those are far and hard to reach without documentation. Documentation can be arranged for the right price. At Zilia's questioning look, Marcus offered a rueful smile. Like I said, I wasn't always a repair technician. I have skills from my previous life. Contacts. Why would you help us? Zilia asked, her voice soft but direct. You made it clear from the beginning that you didn't want to get involved. Marcus was silent for a moment, his eyes distant. Let's just say, I have my own history with corporations that think. They own people. He looked at the crystal in his hand. Besides, if what you're saying is true, then whatever they're mining could be catastrophically dangerous. That makes it everyone's problem. Before Zilia could respond, an alert sounded from Marcus's security system. They both froze. Then Marcus quickly moved to check the monitors. What he saw made his blood run cold. They're back, he said grimly. And they brought friends. Outside the shop, 3 corporate hover cars had pulled up. From them emerged 6 agents, including Davis and Mercer from before. This time, they weren't bothering with the pretense of a casual inquiry. They have a scanner, Marcus noted, spotting a handheld device that one of the agents was calibrating. Energy detector, by the look of it. They're going to sweep the building. They'll find Kalen, Zilia said, panic rising in her voice. He emits trace amounts of the energy continuously. Marcus thought quickly. The basement. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the building, connects to the old subway system. It's how I get certain supplies delivered without official notice. He moved to a section of flooring behind the counter and revealed a concealed hatch. It's not much, but it might shield Kalen's energy signature long enough for us to figure something out. Zilia didn't hesitate. She descended into the darkness, Kalen still securely strapped to her chest. Marcus closed the hatch just as a loud pounding began at the front door. Mr. Brennan, Universal Mining Security. Open up immediately. Marcus took a deep breath, composing himself, then moved to answer the door. As he did, he slipped the Krillian data crystal into a hidden pocket in his boot, an old habit from his previous life. This is becoming harassment, he said as he opened the door, feigning irritation. I've already told you I can't help you. Agent Davis didn't bother with pleasantries this time. We have reason to believe you're harboring fugitives and concealing stolen corporate property. Step aside, Mr. Brennan. Do you have a warrant? Marcus demanded. In response, Mercer produced a document bearing the corporate seal of Universal Mining and the stamp of a district judge. Marcus examined it briefly. It was legitimate, or at least legitimate enough to cause him serious trouble if he resisted. Fine, he said, stepping back. Search all you want. But I'm recording this, and if anything goes missing or gets damaged, my lawyer will be in touch. The agents swarmed into the shop, methodically beginning their search. The one with the scanner moved slowly through the space, the device in his hand emitting soft beeps at irregular intervals. Marcus watched tensely, hoping the basement's layers of concrete and metal would be enough to mask Kalen's energy signature. His shop had been designed with certain security features, a holdover from his paranoid days after leaving Unicomp. But he wasn't sure if they would be sufficient against specialized detection equipment. The scanner-wielding agent paused near the counter, frowning at his device. I'm getting fluctuating readings here. Could be interference from all the electronics, or... Marcus's heart raced. He needed a distraction, something to throw them off. You know, he said casually, moving toward a storage cabinet. If you're looking for unusual energy signatures, I do have something that might interest you. He opened the cabinet to reveal a pulsating blue device about the size of a briefcase. Prototype quantum battery. Purchased it from a Centaurian merchant last month. Gives off all kinds of weird readings. The scanner agent approached the device cautiously. His instrument immediately began emitting a series of rapid beeps. This is unusual, he admitted, studying the readings. It's putting out energy patterns I've never seen before. Like I said, Marcus shrugged Centaurian Tech. They don't exactly share their patents with Earth corporations. While the agents were distracted by the quantum battery, Marcus surreptitiously activated a program on his wrist communicator, sending an encrypted message to an old contact, someone he hadn't reached out to in years, but who owed him a significant favor. Agent Davis, meanwhile, was rifling through Marcus's files, searching for any documentation related to Zilia or Kalen. You won't find employment records, Marcus said. Like I told you before, I work alone. We'll see, Davis replied coldly. Mercer, check the back rooms. Johnson continues scanning the premises. The agent with the scanner, Johnson, apparently, reluctantly turned away from the quantum battery and resumed his methodical sweep of the shop. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead as Johnson approached the area near the hidden hatch. The scanner's beeps increased slightly in frequency. Getting something here, Johnson announced. Faint, but consistent with the target energy signature. Marcus thought. Quickly, that'll be the power converter beneath the floor. It's an old model, leaks all kinds of electromagnetic radiation. Been meaning to replace it, but you know how it is. Expenses. Johnson looked skeptical, but continued moving. When he reached the far wall, he frowned at his scanner. Signal's gone. Must have been interference, after all. Marcus suppressed a sigh of relief. His shielding was working, at least for now. After 30 tense minutes, the agents completed their search without finding anything conclusive. Davis appeared frustrated, but unwilling to admit defeat. We'll be watching this place, Brennan, he warned as they prepared to leave. If we find out you've been lying to us, then you'll come back with another warrant, Marcus finished for him. In the meantime, I have paying customers waiting. So unless you'd like to purchase something. After the agents finally departed, Marcus waited a full 10 minutes before retrieving Zilia and Kalen from the basement. Zilia emerged, looking pale but determined. They'll be back, she said quietly. Yes, Marcus agreed. With better equipment and more men. We need to move quickly. He checked his wrist communicator, which was flashing with an incoming encrypted message. My contact came through. He can get us transport off planet, but it's going to be tight. Us? Zilia asked, her silver eyes widening slightly. I'm in this now, Marcus said grimly. Those corporate types don't forget faces, and they don't forgive interference. Besides, we need to get this data crystal to someone who can expose what universal mining is doing. Zilia studied him for a moment, then nodded. What's the plan? We need to get to the spaceport in Old Sacramento. There's a cargo hauler leaving for the Neptune Collective in 6 hours. My contact has arranged for 3 unmarked crew berths. It won't be comfortable, but it'll get us beyond Earth jurisdiction. 6 hours, Zilia repeated. The city will be locked down by then. They'll have security checkpoints at every major transit hub, which is why we're not taking major transit, Marcus replied, moving to a storage locker at the back of the shop. He entered a complex code, and the locker hissed open to reveal an impressive array of equipment. Some legal, most decidedly not. I knew you weren't just a repair technician, Zilia said, watching as Marcus sorted through the gear. I told you, I had a previous life, Marcus replied, gathering items into a duffel bag. After I left Unicomp, I made sure to have contingency plans. Never thought I'd actually need them. What happened at Unicomp? Zilia asked cautiously. Why did you leave? Marcus paused, his hands stilling momentarily. Let's just say I discovered the company was using my security systems for purposes I hadn't authorized. Surveillance, mostly. Tracking people without warrants. Monitoring communications without consent. His jaw tightened. When I objected, They tried to make me disappear. I was lucky. I saw it coming, got out before they could arrange my accident. So you understand? Zelia said softly. Yeah, Marcus nodded. I understand. With efficient movements, Marcus packed 3 bags, one for each of them. We'll take the maintenance tunnels as far as the old city limits, then use a modified hovercraft to reach the river. From there, we can follow the waterway to the spaceport without passing any checkpoints. They'll be watching the spaceport, Zelia pointed out. Not the maintenance bays, Marcus countered. My contact works in cargo processing. He'll get us aboard before the pre-flight security sweep. It was a desperate plan with 1,000 ways to fail, but it was the only option they had. Zelia checked Kalen's carrier, ensuring it was secure and comfortable for what would likely be a difficult journey. The baby seemed unusually quiet, almost as if he understood the gravity of their situation. As they prepared to leave through the basement tunnel, Marcus took one last look around his shop, the business he had built from nothing after fleeing his old life, the sanctuary that had allowed him to disappear from corporate radar. He would never return to it now. I'm sorry about your shop, Zelia said, reading his thoughts. Marcus shrugged, trying to appear indifferent. It was just a place. Things could be replaced. Not all things, Zelia replied, her hand resting protectively on Kalen. Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, then led them down into the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life of solitary repair work. Behind them, the shop lay silent, soon to become just another abandoned storefront in the technological slums of Neo-Viridian. The maintenance tunnels were a labyrinth of damp, narrow passageways illuminated only by the occasional emergency light and the beam from Marcus's portable lamp. The air was stale and heavy with the scent of mildew and rusting metal. Zelia followed close behind Marcus, with Kalen strapped securely to her chest, his silver eyes wide and alert despite the dim lighting. These tunnels were built during the last resource war, Marcus explained as they navigated a particularly narrow section, designed to keep essential services running even during orbital bombardments. After the war, they were mostly forgotten, except by people who need to move around without being noticed. Like smugglers, Zelia observed. Among others, Marcus agreed. I've used them occasionally to receive specialized components that haven't exactly passed through customs. They had been moving for nearly an hour when Marcus's wrist communicator vibrated with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression growing darker as he read. What is it? Zelia asked. Universal Mining has issued a city-wide alert. They're calling it a public health emergency, claiming a Krillian worker may have been exposed to a hazardous material and needs to be quarantined immediately. That's their cover story? That I'm contaminated? It's effective, Marcus said grimly. Gives them authority to set up checkpoints, conduct scans, even enter private property. And it plays on existing prejudices against off-worlders. Will it affect our escape route? Maybe. My contact says security at the spaceport has been tripled, but he still thinks he can get us aboard the cargo hauler. Marcus paused, considering. We need to adjust our timeline. Move faster. They quickened their pace, pushing deeper into the tunnel network. Occasionally, they would hear the distant rumble of transport vehicles overhead or the hum of underground power conduits. Twice, they had to hide when maintenance drones passed by, performing routine inspections of the tunnel infrastructure. After another hour of travel, they reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel intersected with a much larger passage, an abandoned section of the old subway system. Here, the ceiling rose high enough for them to stand upright, and the path was wide enough for vehicles. This is where we catch our ride, Marcus said, checking his communicator for the time. Should be here in about 10 minutes. While they waited, Zelia took the opportunity to check on Kalen, who had remained remarkably quiet throughout their journey. As she adjusted his carrier, she noticed something concerning. The baby's skin was emitting a faint blue luminescence, barely perceptible in the dim light of the tunnel. Marcus, she called softly, worry evident in her voice. Something's happening with Kalen. Marcus moved closer, his eyes narrowing as he observed the subtle glow. Has this happened before? Only once, right after the accident with the energy sample. Jarrell said it was a reaction to high energy fields. Zelia looked around anxiously. But there shouldn't be anything like that down here. Marcus pulled out a small device from his pack, a modified scanner of his own design. He activated it, sweeping the tunnel around them. The readings made him frown. There's some kind of energy field permeating this area. Faint but unusual. He adjusted the scanner settings. It's similar to the readings I got from your crystal, but more diffuse. Zilia's silver eyes widened. Could the mining operation extend this far? Could they be tunneling beneath the city? Not likely. Marcus shook his head. But they could be transporting the energy source through these tunnels. Less scrutiny than above ground. A soft humming sound interrupted their conversation. From the darkness of the subway tunnel, a sleek, low-profile hovercraft appeared, its engines remarkably quiet for a vehicle of its size. It slowed to a stop before them, and the side hatch slid open to reveal a woman with close-cropped white hair and cybernetic eye implants. "Marcus Brennan," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Zelia couldn't place. "Still alive after all these years. I'm impressed." "Livia," Marcus nodded in greeting. "Thanks for coming." "A debt is a debt," Livia replied simply. "Though after this, we're even. Get in." They climbed aboard the hovercraft, which was clearly designed for stealth rather than comfort. The interior was cramped, with most of the space taken up by the propulsion system and various smuggling compartments. "Your cargo," Livia said, nodding towards Zelia and Kalen. "Interesting. You didn't mention one of them was an infant. Does it matter?" Marcus asked. "It complicates things." Livia eyed Kalen with professional curiosity, especially one that glows. Indeed, Kalen's luminescence had increased slightly since boarding the hovercraft. The blue glow was now clearly visible even in the better-lit interior of the vehicle. "Is your craft carrying any unusual energy sources?" Zelia asked urgently. "Anything experimental or non-standard?" Livia's cybernetic eyes whirred softly as they focused on Zelia. "This vehicle has been modified with certain proprietary technologies, including a power source that doesn't appear on standard scans. We need to shield him," Zelia said to Marcus. "The energy is resonating with whatever's inside him. It could make him detectable." Marcus quickly opened one of his packs and removed what looked like a metallic blanket. "Emergency field dampener. It should help." They wrapped Kalen in the dampening blanket, and gradually the glow began to fade. The baby made a soft, uncertain sound but didn't cry. Zelia stroked his head soothingly, whispering reassurances in her native language. Livia watched this exchange with detached interest before turning back to the controls. "We'll reach the river in 20 minutes. From there, it's a straight shot to the spaceport. Assuming, of course, we don't run into any unexpected patrols." As the hovercraft accelerated down the abandoned subway tunnel, Marcus pulled the Krillian data crystal from his boot and examined it thoughtfully. "Once we reach the Neptune Collective, we'll need to find someone who can authenticate this data," he said quietly to Zelia. "Someone with enough influence to make it public without being silenced by universal mining." "My people have representatives there," Zelia replied. "Diplomats who might help, if we can reach them." "First things first," Marcus said. "We need to get off planet. One problem at a time." The journey through the tunnel system continued without incident, the hovercraft moving swiftly and silently through the darkness. Eventually, they reached a large access hatch that Livia operated with a series of complex codes. The hatch slid open to reveal the night sky and the broad expanse of the American River, its surface reflecting the lights of the city that sprawled along its banks. "We'll follow the river to the delta," Livia explained as the hovercraft emerged from the tunnel and dropped low over the water. "Stay beneath radar level. The water will help mask our thermal signature." The craft skimmed just above the river's surface, sending up a fine spray in its wake. The city lights slid past on either side, seemingly oblivious to the fugitives in their midst. Zelia looked up at the stars, visible despite the urban light pollution. Somewhere up there was freedom, if they could reach it. Their progress was smooth until they rounded a bend in the river and encountered an unexpected obstacle, a security checkpoint spanning the waterway. Floating barriers have been deployed, and uniformed officers were stopping and searching all river traffic. Damn, Livia muttered, quickly reducing speed. That wasn't there this morning. Universal's work? Marcus said grimly. They're sealing the city. Options? Livia asked, her tone professional despite the setback. Marcus thought quickly. We can't go back, and we can't go around. They'll have all waterways covered. We go through, Zelia said suddenly, her voice firm. They're looking for a Krillian woman and a baby. They won't be looking for 3 human maintenance workers. What are you suggesting? Marcus asked. Zelia reached into her pack and removed a small device that resembled a compact mirror. Holographic disguise. Standard issue for Krillian diplomats visiting less welcoming worlds. It won't hold up to a detailed scan, but for a visual inspection. Marcus nodded slowly. It could work. Livia, can you bluff your way through checkpoint? Please, Livia scoffed. I smuggled banned tech through the Mars embargo. This is nothing. They quickly formulated a plan. Zelia activated the holographic disguise, and the air around her shimmered briefly before resolving into the appearance of a human woman with dark hair and tan skin. Kaelin, still wrapped in the dampening blanket, was hidden in one of the smuggling compartments, accessible to Zelia but invisible to cursory inspection. Livia slowed the hovercraft as they approached the checkpoint, adopting a posture of annoyed compliance. She had quickly changed into a uniform bearing the insignia of the Neo-Viridian Municipal Water Authority. Evening, officers, she called as they pulled alongside the patrol boat. What's with the roadblock? We got a reservoir pump failure in Sector 9 that needs attention. The guard, a bored-looking man in a private security uniform, shined a light at their craft. Citywide health alert. Checking all traffic in and out. He squinted at them. Water Authority? Huh? Let me see your work orders. Livia sighed dramatically and produced a datapad with official-looking documentation. Documentation that Marcus strongly suspected had been falsified within the last 5 minutes. Here you go. Signed by Supervisor Hammond himself. You can call him if you want, but he's not going to be happy about delays when half of Sector 9 is without clean water. The guard glanced at the datapad, then at the 3 apparent workers on the hovercraft. What about them? He asked, nodding toward Marcus and the disguised Zelia. My techs, Livia said dismissively. You think I'm going to fix a Class 3 pump breach by myself? The guard seemed satisfied, but his colleague, approaching from the other side of the patrol boat, was more thorough. Standard procedure, the second guard announced. We need to run a scan for biological contaminants. Marcus tensed. A biological scan might not detect Zelia's alien nature through the holographic disguise, but it would certainly register Kaelin's unusual energy signature, dampening blanket or no. Seriously? Livia protested. We're already behind schedule. Not my problem, the guard replied, raising a scanner. Just as he aimed the device at their craft, Marcus made a split-second decision. He reached into his pocket and activated a small electromagnetic pulse emitter, another tool from his collection of questionable equipment. The pulse was localized and brief, but it was enough to temporarily disable the electronic devices in the immediate vicinity, including the guard scanner. What the hell? The guard exclaimed as his device went dead. Cheap government equipment, Livia said with convincing disgust. Look, are we clear to go or what? I've got residents calling the mayor's office about their water. The first guard waved them through, more interested in getting his equipment working again than in detaining what appeared to be irritable municipal workers. As they accelerated away from the checkpoint, Marcus allowed himself a small sigh of relief. That was too close. We're not clear yet, Livia warned. The spaceport will be even more heavily guarded. Zelia, maintaining her holographic disguise, checked on Kaelin in his hidden compartment. The baby was awake but calm, his silver eyes reflecting the lights of the control panel. He seems to understand, she said softly. It's almost as if he knows we're running to protect him. Marcus didn't respond, but he found himself wondering about the mysterious energy that had somehow bonded with the infant. What exactly was Universal Mining extracting from those asteroid mines? And what would happen to Kaelin as he grew older with this unknown force inside him? Questions for another time, he decided. First, they needed to survive the night. The spaceport came into view as they rounded the final bend in the river, a sprawling complex of landing pads, cargo bays, and passenger terminals. Unlike the sleek, corporate-owned facilities in the heart of Neo Viridian, this was an older installation, built during the early days of interplanetary commerce and since relegated to handling less prestigious traffic. It was the perfect place for a cargo hauler bound for the outer colonies to depart without attracting undue attention. Or it would have been, if not for the swarm of security vehicles surrounding it. That's not good, Livia observed, slowing their approach and guiding the hovercraft into a concealed inlet overhung with trees. Looks like Universal called in some serious favors. Those aren't just port security, they've got corporate enforcers and what looks like federal agents as well. Marcus scanned the perimeter with his portable viewer, his expression grim. They've locked down the entire facility. No one in or out without extreme vetting. What about your contact? Zilia asked. Let me check. Marcus activated his communicator, sending an encrypted ping. After a tense moment, he received a response. He says the cargo hauler is still scheduled for departure in 2 hours. He can get us to Base 17, but we're on our own from there. Base 17 is on the far side of the complex, Livia noted, bringing up a schematic of the spaceport on her control panel. Away from the main security concentration, but still guarded. What about alternative entry points? Zilia asked, studying the schematic. Marcus pointed to a section of the perimeter. There's a maintenance access for the environmental systems here. It's not on the main security grid. It'll be locked down like everything else, Livia countered. Maybe not. Marcus said, a plan forming. The port still uses Cinetech security systems, the same ones I helped design at Unicomp. There might be a vulnerability we can exploit. Livia guided the hovercraft to a secluded spot near the section of perimeter Marcus had identified. The three of them disembarked, with Kalen once again secured in his carrier against Zilia's chest, still wrapped in the dampening blanket. The holographic disguise remained active, making her appear human to casual observation. This is where we part ways, Livia told them. My debt is paid. I've gotten you to the spaceport as agreed. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. Thanks, Livia. Don't thank me yet, she replied with a thin smile. You've still got to get past all that security and onto a ship. Not odds I'd bet on. We'll manage, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. After Livia departed, Marcus led Zilia through the underbrush toward the perimeter fence. As they drew closer, they could see that the fence was indeed electrified and monitored by motion sensors, standard security measures that would normally be quite effective. Here's where my misspent youth pays off, Marcus murmured, removing a small device from his pack. Unicomp never did patch this backdoor in the Cinetech systems. He activated the device, which began emitting a specific frequency designed to interface with the security system's maintenance protocols. After a tense minute, a small section of the fence powered down, creating an opening just large enough for them to slip through. We have approximately 3 minutes before the system auto-resets, Marcus warned. After that, the alarms will trigger. They moved quickly through the gap and into the shadows of the spaceport service area. Here, massive environmental processing units hummed with power, filtering the air and regulating temperature for the entire complex. The machinery provided both cover and a path forward. Maintenance tunnels ran beneath the units, connecting to the main facility. Down here, Marcus directed, locating a service hatch partially hidden behind a cooling unit. The hatch required a security code, which he provided from memory. Maintenance codes rarely change. Technicians complain when they do. The tunnel beyond was narrow and designed for utility drones rather than humans, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. Zilia went first, with Kalen securely strapped to her back now, followed by Marcus. The passage was warm from the surrounding machinery and vibrated with the constant operation of the environmental systems. After what seemed like an eternity of crawling through the claustrophobic space, they reached another hatch. Marcus consulted the schematic he had memorized from Livia's display. This should open into a service corridor near Bay 15. From there, It's just 2 bays over to our rendezvous point. The hatch slid open to reveal an empty corridor lined with pipes and conduits. They emerged cautiously, muscles aching from the confined journey through the maintenance tunnel. The corridor was dimly lit by emergency lighting, suggesting it was rarely used by port personnel. "Almost there," Marcus whispered, checking his communicator. "Our window for boarding is in 20 minutes. They moved quickly but carefully along the corridor, alert for any sign of security. When they reached the end, a reinforced door blocked their path. Through its small window, they could see the main floor of the cargo area and the numerous security personnel patrolling it. "We can't go that way," Zilius said, stating the obvious. Marcus was already examining the ceiling. "We don't have to. Look, access to the ventilation system." Using a small tool from his pack, Marcus removed the ventilation grate, revealing a duct large enough for them to crawl through. Once again, Zilia went first, with Kalen now facing forward in his carrier, his silver eyes wide but remarkably calm given the circumstances. The ventilation system was a maze, but Marcus had studied enough schematics of standard spaceport design to navigate with reasonable confidence. They made their way slowly, careful not to make noise that might alert those below to their presence. Through occasional grates, they could see glimpses of the cargo area. Workers loading containers, security personnel checking manifests, customs officials inspecting shipments. Finally, they reached a section that Marcus identified as being above Bay 17. Through the grate, they could see a large cargo hauler being loaded with the last of its shipments. Workers moved with practiced efficiency, securing containers and checking seals. "There's our ride," Marcus whispered. "The stellar horizon. Not much to look at, but it'll get us to Neptune." Indeed, the ship was a utilitarian vessel, designed for function rather than appearance. Its hull bore the scars of countless journeys through the unforgiving environment of space, and its engines looked to be at least a generation behind current technology. But to Zilia, it was the most beautiful sight she had ever seen, their passage to freedom. "How do we get aboard without being seen?" she asked. Marcus checked his communicator. "My contact says there's a crew access port on the starboard side that's currently unmonitored. The loading supervisor has been paid to look the other way for exactly 3 minutes, starting." He checked the time. "Now." They quickly removed the grate and dropped down to the floor of Bay 17, landing behind a stack of cargo containers that shielded them from view. Moving with urgent stealth, they made their way toward the stellar horizon, using the containers as cover. They were just approaching the crew access port when a shout from across the bay froze them in place. "Security. Alert. All personnel, we have unauthorized access in Maintenance Tunnel 3E. Lock down all bays." The security breach had been discovered. Perhaps the fence reset had triggered an alarm after all, or maybe a routine scan had detected their passage through the ventilation system. Whatever the cause, their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "Run," Marcus urged, abandoning stealth for speed. They sprinted the final distance to the access port, which stood slightly ajar as promised. Behind them, security personnel were converging from multiple directions, some already spotting the running figures and calling from the halt. Zilia reached the port first, slipping through with Kalen. Marcus followed, pulling the hatch closed behind them and engaging the manual lock. They found themselves in a narrow service corridor within the ship, emergency lighting casting everything in a red glow. "This way," Marcus directed, leading them deeper into the vessel. "The crew quarters should be on the lower deck." They hurried through the ship, hearing the commotion outside as security surrounded the stellar horizon. Alarms began to sound throughout the spaceport, and an automated announcement advised all personnel to prepare for emergency protocols. "They'll search the ship," Zilia said breathlessly as they descended a ladder to the lower deck. "Not if we launch first," Marcus replied grimly. "And we launch in 15 minutes. They located the unmarked crew quarters that had been arranged for them, a small cabin barely large enough for the bunks it contained. It wasn't meant for comfort, but it would keep them hidden during the departure process. No sooner had they secured the door than the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all crew, this is Captain Reeves. Prepare for immediate departure. We have a security situation developing in the bay. All hands to launch stations. They're rushing the launch, Marcus realized. Our contact must have convinced the captain that waiting would only make things worse. Through the small viewport in their cabin, they could see security forces surrounding the ship, some attempting to gain access through the main cargo doors. But the Stellar Horizon was already powering up its engines, the deep rumble vibrating through the hull. Port authority to Stellar Horizon. A stern voice came over the ship's communication system, audible even in their cabin. You're not cleared for departure. Power down immediately or face serious consequences. The captain's reply was calm but firm. Port authority, this is Stellar Horizon. We have a scheduled departure window and valid clearance codes. Our manifest shows all cargo accounted for. We are proceeding as authorized. It was a bluff, of course, but backed by whatever influence or bribery Marcus's contact had arranged. For a tense moment, it seemed like the standoff might escalate to forcible prevention of a launch. Then, the ship lurched slightly as the docking clamps released. They were moving. They're letting us go? Zelia asked incredulously. Not willingly. Marcus replied, watching through the viewport as the security forces withdrew from the immediate vicinity of the engines. But stopping a ship once it's initiated launch protocols is dangerous. Could cause an engine breach that would take out half the spaceport. They're backing off for now, but they'll surely alert authorities at our destination. By then, we'll have disappeared into the Neptune Collective, Zelia said with grim determination. Their jurisdiction doesn't extend there. The Stellar Horizon rose from the landing pad, its powerful engines pushing against Earth's gravity. Through the viewport, they watched as Neo-Viridian, with its gleaming towers and squalid slums, receded beneath them. Soon, the curvature of the Earth became visible, a blue-white crescent against the darkness of space. Only when they had achieved orbit and set course for the outer planets did Zelia finally allow herself to relax slightly. She unwrapped Kalen from his dampening blanket and deactivated her holographic disguise, returning to her natural indigo-skinned, silver-eyed appearance. Kalen, free from the constraining blanket, made a soft cooing sound and reached a tiny hand toward the viewport, as if greeting the stars that would guide them to their new home. The faint blue luminescence had returned to his skin, pulsing gently in rhythm with what might have been his heartbeat. Marcus watched the mother and child with a mixture of wonder and concern. He had thrown away his life on Earth, his business, his anonymity, his carefully constructed refuge from corporate retribution, all to help a desperate alien woman and her mysterious child. By any rational calculation, it had been a foolish decision. And yet, looking at Zelia's face as she held her son, seeing the hope and determination that had replaced the fear and desperation, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, something beyond mere survival. What happens now? Zelia asked softly, turning to look at him. Now, we have 3 weeks of space travel to plan our next steps, Marcus replied. We need to decrypt the rest of that data crystal, find your people's representatives in the Neptune Collective, and figure out exactly what Universal Mining is up to with this dark energy of theirs. Zelia nodded, then said something unexpected. Thank you, Marcus. Not just for helping us escape, but for... She paused, searching for the words, for seeing us as people worth saving, not just problems or assets. Marcus, uncomfortable with gratitude, merely shrugged. Universal Mining and companies like them have been treating people as disposable for too long. Maybe it's time someone pushed back. As the Stellar Horizon accelerated toward the outer planets, carrying its registered cargo and 3 unauthorized passengers, Earth dwindled to a bright point of light among countless others. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the possibility of justice. Behind them lay a planet where corporations ruled and profit outweighed life, a system that had failed Zelia and her husband, just as it had failed Marcus years before. For now, they had won a temporary reprieve. The real battle, the fight to expose Universal Mining's dangerous experiments and protect Kalen from those who would exploit him still lay ahead. But they had taken the first step, and sometimes that was the most important one. In the small cabin of a nondescript cargo hauler, an unlikely family began to form. A disgruntled human technician with a murky past, an alien mother with an unwavering will to protect her child, and a baby who might hold within him energies beyond any of them fully understood. 3 fugitives, bound by circumstance and choice, hurtling through the void toward a future they would forge together. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, Kalen's silver eyes watched the stars with a wisdom that seemed beyond his months, as if he somehow knew that his journey was just beginning.